Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. We are live on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Max Sage, your host, and delighted to be back after completing my pre-season training, ready and raring to go for the new season. Yeah, trial, yeah. Not maybe more of a holiday than training, David. Training in Turkey. Thanks very much to Mark and for Max for stepping in. They said I was grown a beard in Turkey, which I can confirm was true for the first half of the holiday. And then I really looked at it and thought, I need to get rid of this. So I decided to get rid of the beard.
I didn't realise you could grow a beard. Being quite proud of my beard.
Yeah, yours is good, David. You'll have to send some in the post for me to stick on all the way from Australia. So I'm not sure on the beard comments, Max and Mark, but thank you for stepping in anyway. Also joining us, which I'm sure you can see, viewers, and hear him already, is the ever enthusiastic Aussie man, David Boldeman, who will, I'm sure, be full of enthusiasm and energy as Forest enter the final preparation and week before we kick off the season with Bournemouth at home on Saturday. David, good to see you. How are you? How was? I was about to say, how was your pre-season? How have you been keeping?
Yeah, mate. Well, just pumped. So I would implore any Forest fan to do yourself a favour and go watch every goal highlight, which I've just done from last season, and you just remember all those magic moments. You remember the Hudson-Odoi flick up and the bend. Then you see the bend goal again, and then you see another version of the bend goal. You remember the Taiwo moments, just the speed of Alanga, that the ball hitting Bolly in the head and going in, some of that, the Toffolo header, just all those great moments. And so it's just a great time to be a Forest fan. I'm particularly buoyant about this season ahead and just can't wait. I'm a bit jealous that I can't go to, having been to a couple of matches last season. I'm pumped. So fantasy, I've booked my fantasy team. I've got 5 Forest players, plus Brennan Johnson, plus James Garner. What could possibly go wrong, Max?
Do you know, we were tempted to maybe do a Garibaldi Red Fantasy Football League, but then I realised that knowing my luck, we'd set it up and I'd probably finish bottom because I just forget about it after the first few weeks and then my team ends up finishing bottom. In fact, I came bottom with some mates last year and had to do a punishment. So there you go. It's not good.
Yeah, no. Well, it's a big investment of time.
Yeah. It's, you know, I know some people that take it so seriously as well. They have like Excel spreadsheets and everything.
Oh yeah, no, they certainly do. It's a good way to follow it. But what I thought was telling from the fantasy season this year was just the uptake of Forest players. So I do a draft rather than the classic, just everyone picks the squad. And so, you know, Hudson-Odoi and Alanga and Chris Wood. So it's just not Morgan Gibbs-White that's getting taken in fantasy these days, which is a sign of, one, greater knowledge of just the Forest players in general, and two, you know, slightly more positive feelings about our Garibaldi Reds.
Yeah, absolutely. We're positive all round for the Garibaldi Reds on the Garibaldi Red. Right, let's start. Before we get on to some questions, we are live on YouTube and Facebook, so you can on this Monday afternoon. So if you want to get your questions in to us on Facebook and YouTube, we can read them throughout. If you're obviously listening back on Apple Podcasts, then there'll be questions that have already been given in to us. We put a call out on the usuals, Twitter and everything like that, Facebook, for your questions. Before we do get onto the Q&A side, we've got to start really with some big news recently from Forest that kind of came from the weekend, more so last night. We're really with Danilo and Neco Williams. We'll start with Danilo and the links that he's had from AC Milan. Certain interest, no formal bids yet, but they are interested, AC Milan, very much so. They've got a new Portuguese manager as well, ready for the new season. I hope I pronounce his name right, Paulo Fonseca. He is a big fan of Danilo. David, I mean, what do you make, first of all, initially of that link? And would you sell him? Because he has been a crucial player for Forest. You know, he can be instrumental, you know, part of the midfield. And you just look back to that Brentford goal, away goal he scored at Brentford last season. Big goal, big moment. And Forest maybe would miss him.
Well, I had to go back to the 31st of March versus Crystal Palace for the last match that Danilo wasn't the starter in a live competitive fixture. £20 million signing. If we value him at 30 million, 35, maybe even higher. there's a risk if you were to replace, a like for like and let him walk out the door. Whilst, the other players we've had at that level of spend, most notably Gibbs White and Sangare. Gibbs White's probably been worth it. Sangare, it's looking like we're more positive. It's just a big hole to fill. Do we have someone to fill those shoes? Dominguez has looked pretty good. We've obviously got Yates still fill, around that space as well, but we're not going to, finish 10th with Yates, God bless him. So it would be a shame. And one of the strengths that I'm seeing with Forest this season is the consistency of the players. We haven't had 29 players coming in. All of the players in the Forest squad that have come in. And what do we know about Nuno is that he typically starts seasons strongly. So it would be a shame for him to lose Danilo. And, he's a pretty popular player with the Forest fans. He looks settled. It would be a shame. But having said that, we need Nottingham Forest to be a land of opportunity. And if AC Milan comes knocking on the door, who are we to knock back the opportunity for someone who's given us a fair bit over the last couple of years and some memorable moments? So we if he wants to go, you've got to let him go. But it will be a real shame. Because I think he starts on Saturday.
Yeah,
I think in a 4-2-3-1. I think he starts with Sangare. Is my take.
Yeah.
So be a starter coming out of the team. And when I know you're going to ask me later about who do you think's going to go down, and the other teams have got key players in starters and positions out of their squads. But he's not Murillo or Gibbs White. He's not an out and out star. Where do you rate him? If you were to rate the Forest players, Max, 1 through 25, where does Danilo sit?
I'd actually probably put him in my top 10. Would you? I would.
10?
Yeah, but probably not top 5. When you think about
5.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You make a very good point, particularly, with all the interest surrounding Morgan Gibbs White and Murillo, when the worry that we're going to have to sell one of those two to stay in PSR ultimately. We always said we'd rather sell Murillo, but at the end of the day, losing any of those would have been such a real shame for Forest. To lose Danilo,
one of those could have been catastrophic.
Yeah.
Gibbs White would be Stan Collymore-esque, whereas Danilo, it's like, well, we could still argue until you're blue in the face whether Yates or Dominguez is better than Danilo in those positions anyway. And so are we better off to sell him for 30, go buy another £15 million player and then try and sell them for £30 million in another couple of years and then have that as one of our development positions? That would make good business sense, much like the Mangala sale, I guess.
Here's a question, David. It would leave Forest. I'm just trying to it would leave Forest with 4 midfielders, 4 players in those midfield positions if Danilo left. Do you need more, do you think, in the Premier League? It's such a competitive league. Think about the fitness of the players and players ultimately getting injured throughout the season. Is it a position where if Danilo leaves, Forest are going to have to go and get another midfielder? Or you think if Danilo went, Forest would just stick with the midfield players we've got right now?
Well, what is it? It's a 3, 8, 8, and 6. I think we worked out the numbers were. So I think we can survive with not replacing him. I think we've got Yates and Sangare and Dominguez and Gibbs White and Anderson. They're your 5 that you play in the centre spots, aren't they?
Yeah, surely. Yeah.
If you cop an injury to Gibbs White, and then you're starting to look pretty skinny, aren't you?
You are indeed.
So it just seems that
it is a difficult one.
Burns you, doesn't it? I would not like to see him leave at all, and I just think we've got a player who's settled. Let's give him another season.
Yeah, I agree. Don't sell him unless there's real worry for PSR.
At 40,
yeah.
At 40 or 45, though,
you'd be very tempted to say that because Forest.
Yeah, I just don't think 30 is enough of an upside from 20, and the risk is at 40 you could buy in 2 players for 20, and one of them will hit, and you're better off. So,
yeah, Forest value Danilo around 30 to 40 million. AC Milan However, according to the BBC, are looking in the region of 25 million. So it'll be
Not
interesting to see whether they do budge. But I think they'd need to submit more for Forest to accept. Let's move on, because there's only so much we can talk about with Danilo. We've covered him lots in the podcast before about his contributions and everything like that. So it will be interesting to see how it develops with Forest. And obviously, ultimately, if he starts on Saturday, could that be his last game in a Forest shirt? Who knows? Hopefully not. But let's see. In fact, as well, because we are live on YouTube and Facebook, if you agree with Forest selling maybe Danilo for a certain price, then let us know. If you think it would be catastrophic to lose him, then also get in touch. But let's turn our attention as well to another player that has attracted interest, and one that I don't know about you, David, but I certainly didn't expect, covering Forest for a long time and thinking kind of as we went into this summer and pre-season and transfer window, I did not expect him really to get much interest. That's no disrespect to him. He's a great player, but Neco Williams with interest from West Ham, and actually a formal bid being submitted in the past few days by Atlanta in a region of around 20, it was 20, I think it was $20 million. So it equates to, I think, about 17 million British pound. David, is that a player that again, Forest should be looking to sell, Neco Williams, or does that leave you very thin at the back? We were just talking before we came on air as well. Who do you actually play in the left back position? Do you move Ola Aina? What do you make of that?
Well, last season, when we were looking at the stocks of Nottingham Forest at right back, we had Serge Aurier and we had Gonzalo Montiel, the Argentine World Cup winner. And so you would have thought that after the season Serge had that Neco was third on the pecking order of that lot. And then somehow Neco has beaten both of them out and really was the mainstay at right back. You know, they sold Serge. Montiel looked pretty ordinary in patches. So he looks to be the starting right back. So unless you've got a ready-made replacement, which, you know, you could argue you could play Ola Aina at right back and you've got Toff floating around and the left back that they were linked to elsewhere. I just don't like the idea of selling players for the sake of selling players. We've got the information on Neco. We know what we're in for. We've got the past histories on him. From what we got him in for 17, selling him for 20 is hardly moving the deck chairs and a game-changing sale for us, unless we're convinced that Neco's not any good. But I think we're still yet to see the best of Neco. What is he, 24 years old, something like that? His best years ahead of him. I'd argue that Forest are a more high-profile team than Atalanta, but, you know, I'm an English speaker, so I could be wrong there. I'd like to see Neco as well. If I had to choose between him and Danilo, I'd probably let Neco Williams go. But he seems to also fit better with the Nuno style of the three at the back, and the wing backs just seems to fit his style a little bit more. Maybe he's a higher up the pitch player. Again, sell him 5 weeks ago. Don't sell him before the start of the season. You know what I mean? Like that would be frustrating. How do you feel about Neco?
Yeah, I agree. I was just about to actually say that I think since Nuno's arrival, I think Neco's been one of the players that's massively improved under him, and I think he fits his system. I think it would be a shame for Forest to get rid of him. You know, we've been linked with a player that's caught the eye in the Olympics, weirdly enough, for France, left back Bradley Locko. Again, is it worth? I often think this close to the season, and this has something to do with it. And I'm sure if me and you played professional football, David, and for a high level, we'd probably understand it more. But it must be really unsettling for a player to be linked with all, you know, and everyone say, well, they're professional footballers, but to be linked with different clubs and the media speculation constantly when you're trying to really focus on the football. And for Neco to put the Forest shirt on, which I'm sure he'll do on Saturday, it can just surely be quite uneasy for a player to be linked. I've always been a big fan of actually closing the window before the season started. You know, I still think that should come in. Maybe a bit of a controversial opinion there, but I just think it's unsettling for players, and it can really disrupt the start of a season. And that's what it could do, not just with Neco Williams, but obviously with Danilo as well. So again, I'd be tempted to keep him, unless Forest want a really smaller squad, unless Neco isn't part of the plans. But you watch the pre-season videos that Forest and absolute credit to the media and communications team at Forest. Have done a brilliant job of putting out from the preseason camp, and you see Neco actually just being quite an instrumental part of the squad, and he seems like he's a bit he seems like he's a bit of a team leader.
Yeah, I like your read on those social, that those videos tell you more than you think. If you watch the videos this season to last season, I for one, you can tell Ryan Yates is more in with a lot of the players now this year than he was last year. I think this season has helped prove himself. But back to your point on Neco Williams, look, I know we're not professional footballers, but I know, like, if you have the same consistent team, you learn about the nuances of how does Neco like to be, to have the ball passed to him? Which foot is he stronger on? You just learn those small intricacies just come from, having the same consistent teams and selling Neco for 20 million so you can get in a 15 million or a 17 million replacement. I just don't see the upside that we're going to get unless you've got a out and out player that is just outrageously better than Neco. Then I just don't think that's the right call. And then back to your point on the transfer market, Max, is a good suggestion, but I think they keep it open so that teams can understand the problems they might have, because whilst preseason is preseason and they have matches that are somewhat competitive, you can't really tell. Like, we don't know how we don't really know how well Forest are going to do this season. We will know 90 minutes after full time, or after 90 minutes against Bournemouth. We will know. We can suddenly beat Bournemouth, which we haven't done for freaking years. Then we'll know, and so it just makes a big difference. So I can see their rationale on it, but I can also see your rationale. It would be annoying it sucked losing Brendan Johnson, like after a couple of matches. It's just heartbreaking, but
there you go. I tell you what, David, if Forest beat Bournemouth on Saturday, I'm going to be the happiest man doing this podcast next Monday. It's just like we just haven't beat them in so long.
Please. Oh, just beat Bournemouth. Just beat them. It's such an I don't want to say it's like a crunch game. It's like such an important game, first match of the season. But beating Bournemouth would help. It really would. So I just all the Forest fans, get behind them. Let's get pumped up, and let's work out what Sangare's song's going to be, because I don't think he has one yet, does he, Max?
No, he doesn't. We were just talking about that again before we came on. We're going to touch on Sangare later, so hold the thought, David. Right, let's get on to some Forest questions that we've got. And this one came to us on X, Twitter, whatever it's called these days, and it cracked me up. It cracked me up a little bit, this question. With the first 10 league fixture lists for Forest are relatively kind. If the team earn a respectable number of points, maybe a more comfortable season is in prospect. If the results are bad, and maybe the stability may crumble very quickly, Nuno will be gone. Which way could it go? It's a good question, right? It's a big question, and you're almost, I guess, almost predicting what it could be like for all teams. You look at even the opening weekend of the Championship this season already calls for, managers like Wayne Rooney to go after a thump into Sheffield Wednesday. You just don't know. But good job Forest to have Wayne Rooney in charge. I mean, what do you think there, David? Because the opening 10 games are
they're very, very. I was looking at them until the Arsenal match away. I'm thinking there's an argument I could convince myself that Forest could win every match. Now, obviously, we're not going to win every match, but we've beaten Chelsea away before. We've beaten Liverpool. There's a whole bunch of winnable matches there. Forest could start out on absolute fire, but there's another scenario where you're just like, oh, guys, oh no.
and I also think that every game is difficult. And I said it last season, and I'll say it again. I think Forest are more likely going to struggle against teams like Wolves or Southampton away compared to a Liverpool or Chelsea. Genuinely, we've always said it, but Forest do tend to struggle when almost we're the favourites, and will pull it out the bag against the big boys, and that is the Premier League in a way. It is a really difficult league. I don't think there is an easy game. It is a nice running compared to the last few seasons, but at the end of the day, you've got to play everyone, right? So surely you're best getting a few of the the big six out of the way first, which Forest have got. You mentioned Arsenal, Liverpool there towards the
but
first 10.
You want to get teams at different times. You'd have to think we're getting Bournemouth at a good time with the Solanke departure, but they're not really going to know what that team's going to look like in that new era. You'd have to think that the Saints, that first away match we have, sure, they'll be spirited for their first home match, but they're not going to be better than they were when they got relegated, and they'll still be working it out as well. So getting them at that time's good. You'd have to think Liverpool with the new manager still working it out. So I'd really like the draw for us. So I think we should be top half after the first 10 matches, and then the season will really start to make it tricky for us, and then we'll come back to the field a little bit, I think.
Yeah, we might be top of the league by the end of September when that international break
Our best chance of being top of the league is beating Bournemouth 5-0 and being top of the league up. That is the only chance we have of being top of the league, I would think.
You never know. You never know. Right, we'll get on to more of the season and upcoming because we've got a lot of questions to answer on that. Obviously, I cannot believe it's come around this quick. As we begin final preparations this week. Another question. Niall on Twitter asks, doubt it's an easy one to answer, but does Jonjo Shelvey still play for Nottingham Forest? Well, I did a bit of research. And I've been doing research for a while on this, right? And it's really, really difficult. You think it'd be dead simple. You just go on the internet and search whether Jonjo Shelvey was a Forest player. So Forest actually announced originally that he'd been sold to a Turkish side and his contract had been terminated. And after all of the kind of fan reaction towards Jonjo Shelvey, and he had that argument with Steve Cooper, if you can remember, cast your mind back to then, we all thought, that's it. Jonjo Shelvey's out the door. What a mess of a signing it was. He's gone. We can move on. So can he. But actually, Jonjo Shelvey is still officially registered to Forest. And if you do search on the internet, that's what it kind of comes up with. There was lots of media reports just a couple of months ago that Forest were answering questions, almost unanswered questions over the deal and whether we'd actually terminated his contract, whether it was a loan deal. It was all a bit over the place. But to answer the question, Niall, Jonjo Shelvey is registered to Forest. He didn't go on the preseason tour. I doubt he's going to be part of the plans this season. And he doesn't. I don't think he even turns up to the City Ground on match days. But according to things I've looked at, Jonjo Shelvey is registered to Forest still, which is a mad one. And David, you were saying that you predicted him to have a.
I didn't. A long time ago, last season I was asked, "What's your outlandish Forest prediction?" And I said, "The manager will get sacked. And as a result, somehow Jonjo Shelvey will still be a Nottingham Forest player. And then he will somehow make his way back into the squad and have a career resurgence." So two of those things were proven to be correct, but sadly, not the third. There's a good comment from Chock-a-Block who says, "Don't ask to see his highlights reel." I'm going to ask you though, Max, what would need to happen for Jonjo Shelvey to make his way back to the City Ground and pull on a red shirt again? Is there any scenario where that's possible? I don't think there is.
No, there isn't.
All right, Jonjo.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to give that plain and simple answer. I just don't think. Yeah, I think it's. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Hell would need to freeze over.
I think you're more likely to get a call up from Nuno, David, all the way from Australia to come play for Forest than Jonjo Shelvey returning. Right, moving on from him because we don't want this to become a Jonjo Shelvey podcast. Claire on Facebook asks, which leads us quite nicely into this one because while we were away, Max and Mark did a brilliant podcast on predicting Forest's 11. And Claire asks, who is your captain for this season? Both of those predicted Yates. That's Max and Mark in our previous episode. I'm going to stick with them. I'm going to say Yates as well. Plain and simple. David, what about you? Who's your captain?
Club captain or starting 11 captain versus Bournemouth?
Well, I think maybe let's go club captain, providing the club captain will start against Bournemouth.
Ryan Yates is obviously the club captain.
Yeah.
And so he's through and through Nottingham. The connection that he has to certainly the local fans is impressive, and his story and everything that he's done is terrific. However, I do subscribe to the theory, the Sven-Goran Eriksson theory, which is your most influential player and best player should typically be your captain. So I believe Morgan Gibbs-White should be the captain of Nottingham Forest. I believe that he wears his heart on his sleeve and he is the man to take us forward in the Premier League. That is who I would name. But I would run it. Like, you don't run a team with one captain. You have multiple leaders. You have leaders for different moments. If you watch the social clips of the team getting together, you see the times where Willy Bolly is the leader, or Alanga is the leader. So there are different leadership moments for different players, and I would find a role for both of those. If Ryan Yates is on the field, though, he is the team captain. But I would certainly run with Morgan Gibbs-White because he is on the field the most and will play the most matches. Just seems the obvious move for mine. So,
yeah. Definitely. Lee asks he doesn't ask, he says on YouTube, Neco would be my preference to leave out of the two. As much as Danilo is sloppy sometimes, he's valuable to the team now. I pray we get Jimenez in up front. He looks quality. Yeah, he does, to be fair.
Max, on that last point, your thing on who's the captain. So how does Yates make the team?
What in terms of Yates making the team?
How does he make the team versus Bournemouth? Is he playing with Sangare? Is he not Danilo? Like, how is he in the squad? Really?
I think, yeah. I think Ryan Yates will start on Saturday. I think it's the type of game, right? It's probably going to get quite scrappy at times.
Ryan Yates type game. Why? Because it's a championship game, is it?
Yeah, but I genuinely just think that it is, and I think for the opening, I don't know, for the opening game, Yates is your type of player that needs to play, right? It will get scrappy at times. It might be a bit of a dogfight. We saw against Sheffield United last season. Look at that. That wasn't easy when first home game last season, Forest won 2-1. You need players like Yates in there, break up the midfield. If Sangare starts, that's not the end of the world by all means. Sangare's had a good pre-season, which we're going to get onto in a minute. But if we're talking about
25 million bid comes in for Yates, Max. 25.
You're testing my Ryan Yates loyalty now.
I'm putting it there. Is that a good sale for Forest?
What, for 25 million for Ryan
25
Yates?
million pound comes in for Yates and he can go to West Ham? Is he out? Are you saying thanks?
I'm just looking at the Forest calendar on the wall with Ryan Yates on. And it would honestly be heartbreaking. 30 million, and I'd say yes. 30 million, I'd say that would be a good deal.
I just higher than Danilo.
Say again.
You value him higher or equal to Danilo?
I value him higher than Danilo.
Higher than Danilo. Interesting.
Because I think as well, when we talk about consistency, and Mark on the podcast will always talk about cohesion and things like that, and having that settled starting 11. I think, again, this is no disrespect to Sangare. He didn't have a great second half of the season because that's when he joined Forest. I just think in terms of consistency, I think Ryan Yates is the type of player you start with. And then if we only beat Bournemouth by 1-0 and you look at one of the areas in midfield and you think Yates has had a poor game and Forest need to improve in that area and it's not being broken up enough, or, in transition, it's getting a bit lost at times. And that's where, okay, Sangare maybe comes in and Nuno has, although he doesn't want to be experimenting too much, he has that other option. But for me, I start Ryan Yates on Saturday. Would you start Sangare?
I would definitely start Sangare. All of the pre-season seems to indicate that Sangare is starting. He seems quicker, fitter. His body shape's changed. He looks to be in the shape that he will start. What I have learnt is that Yates is far more popular with the Forest attending fans. International fans don't seem to have the same connection with Yates. And what I've also learnt is that off the ball, Yates's work when you watch live is unbelievable. And so the TV does not do Ryan Yates justice for amount of work that he does off the ball and the tackles that he makes and the positions and the things that he intercepts. So for those points of view, I can understand your position. Certainly if Danilo is looking like he's being sold, though, I would be playing him and putting him front, right and center in the shop window so that he can get the maximum value. But I'm running with Sangare and Danilo as my two deeper midfielders with Gibbs-White and the wingers, Alanga and Cho with, I think, front.
Interesting. Yeah, go and watch that episode that we did on the podcast, predicting Forest 11. It was good. Do you know what, David?
Max, for my Ryan Yates take though.
No, probably not. No, probably not. And I think it causes a lot of speculation and debate in the fan base, right? A lot of people are 50-50. I've had many interesting conversations with people who sit around me. Do you know what, David? People still come up to me and ask at Forest games whether I'm Ryan Yates' brother, which was started. It's a bit of a wild rumor on the internet about a year ago. I will leave that question to everyone's imagination. But yeah, maybe that's why I cover Forest so much. Is that in fact Ryan Yates is my long lost brother. So there you go. In fact, my brother looks more like Ryan Yates than me. Right, moving on from Yates, and we look at this one, and a nice one for you actually, David. Simon asks on Facebook, as an overseas fan, what is it genuinely like to follow the club overseas? How much do you miss the City ground?
Oh, I can definitely answer that one. So it's 3:30 a.m. You've gotten up to watch your beloved Nottingham Forest. You're sitting there going, looking at the table on your phone, like, yep, all we've got to do is just win this match and we're going to make the playoffs, and we're a chance of being back in the Premier League. And then they bloody let 2 goals in, don't they? And you're sitting there going, why the hell have I just woken up at 3:30 a.m. to watch this? And it just absolutely breaks your heart. So it's, as an international fan, it can be a little tricky at times with the times. What's been really refreshing at the moment is just how many people know Nottingham Forest and know the certain players. And look, I've been to, before last season, I'd been to the City ground on a couple of occasions and had the best times, but I'd not been for a Premier League match. And I'd also not been since I've been a regular podcaster and had, more friends in Nottingham like I have now. There is nothing like going to the game. The pub beforehand, that crazy pork roll that I had afterwards, chatting to the fans and seeing the bus and going into the store and all that sort of stuff. The 30,000 of you that get to go each week and you get to go see, Max at the pre-match events that he's got. That stuff, don't take it for granted. It is an incredible experience. And to just get to do that once or twice in a lifetime and get to go and see those things is just a lot of fun. So it is frustrating. It's a little tricky to also stay connected to the team. So lots of changes in the championship years when you would, from season to season, you'd had all the loan players go out. That was a little difficult to follow. So for the international fans, retaining the players is a little bit more important because we don't have the same supplemental or news that we just get through from the radio or anything like this. And so what's also been telling for the Forest fans internationally is YouTube. So the channels like this one and Matt Davies and what he does, and the channels like Dora and Rads and those sort of guys that and Max's match day with Max, Max and Dor through that championship season where we got promoted gave us a connection to watching the matches and helped me certainly not fall back in love with Forest, but just remind me why I love Forest, I guess. So it's hard, much like it's frustrating. It's all the same stuff. But it's great when people know who Morgan Gibbs White are and they can talk to you about that. So it's never been a better time to be a Forest fan. I was driving down the street the other day, a couple of weeks ago, and I just got, come on, you Reds, out the window from some random. So good.
It's a good feeling, isn't it? That it's a good feeling.
It's just the gift. Like Nottingham Forest for me is giving me a mateship with Max and a whole bunch of other people, and giving me a chance to, I support Nottingham Forest because my brother chose Forest in the early 80s. He got me watching League Cup finals and FA Cup finals with Brian Clough, and the story of why I support Forest is because I thought Clough looked cool in a tracksuit and he was just awesome in an interview. Was why I'd watch. So, the relationship I have with my brother because of Nottingham Forest is awesome. So, yeah, Reds, defo. Let's stay up. Important.
Yeah, no, defo. It's an interesting point, and you do. I think even maybe me takes it for granted, right? Following the club for so long and being lucky, to be able to even cover Forest and and host podcasts. It's a special feeling, and the power of the media, David. When you think about things like YouTube and all the different fan channels that can help you follow. So no, good stuff, and I'm sure you'll be back for a game at the City Ground next season. Yeah.
Oh, that's the plan. But I used to just chill out for. There was 15 minutes of British football on every day on Australian Sporting Network, and then every 1 in 20 might have 30 seconds of Nottingham Forest. That's all I got. And then I bought a newspaper that was called British Soccer Week, and I got an article about that big on Nottingham Forest. It's very hard. So today's day and age, it's just awesome. I tell you what was telling for me and so surprising getting to the ground is that Mullen Kintyre is quite emotional to be there for the first time, because the other times I hadn't been there, it wasn't as prevalent. And then just the Forest fans, you guys are so funny. Like the Murillo chant and booing the Premier League song. Like some of the stuff that Forest fans do, you just don't realise there's like a real kind of amusement about it. So, yeah, that's the other things you don't get. Yeah, that Murillo chant. And yeah, I'm on the train on the way to the Burnley match, and some Forest fans work out I'm Australian, and then we're like, shrimp on the barbie. It's just so funny.
That's good. That's very good. Love that. Right, to finish, last question, and a nice and easy one. Sean asks, boys, it's an easy one, but where are we finishing this season? I've got to stick really with mine that I've said recently, and it's plastered all over magazines and articles that I've done around Forest and previewing them this season. I've predicted Forest to finish 12th, which some people may think is very optimistic and might be maybe very out there, but that isn't just me being really positive and thinking, and having that kind of, let's all hope that Forest finish high because we love them and we support them. But that's also with a neutral head on, right? Of Forest have had a great pre-season. When you look at how many players not how many players have come in, and Forest have been consistent with the transfer approach. And we did an episode with football transfer expert Graham, who massively talked into about how Ross Wilson was heading up the recruitment, and now Forest off the pitch, you're getting all these different things right, which makes me genuinely believe that we're going to have a much better season. We've got a Premier League quality manager in Nuno. I think Forest will finish 12th. So that's what I'll stick with. I've got to stick with it now. What do you think, David? Lower, higher? It's like that TV show, that game, isn't it?
12 is slightly optimistic.
That's my young brain, isn't it?
Oh, well, how good would 12 be? Oh,
it'd be amazing.
Look, I just look at it from the which teams are we better than, which teams might we be better than, and which teams on our day we could be better than. You'd have to think that the 3 promoted teams were better than all of them, because certainly Leicester and Southampton can't be better than they were when they got relegated with the outgoings that they've had. Leicester are looking at the points deduction. Ipswich, I'm not exactly shaking in my boots by playing Ipswich. So if we're better than those 3, then we're 17th. Then if you look at Brentford, Tony might be on the way out, and I think we're better than Bournemouth now with their departures. So that gets us to 15th. Then if you look at Wolves and Fulham, I think we're a 50% chance of being better than both of them. So if you take the expected utility payoff, then 14th is probably likely, but I would say 13th is possible. So you've got us 12th, Max. So who else are we better than other than the ones that I just mentioned?
I'm not going to answer that because I really don't want to throw myself. Well, I think all the teams you've just mentioned. It is difficult.
No.
Yeah. I think Forest are, which is telling because we lost both times last season, right? And I can remember both Everton games were really poor. Can you remember? Forest.
It could be better than maybe Brighton can slip.
No, I don't think Forest are better than Brighton. I think Brighton will do well again this season. But I don't think it will be. Look, I don't think it will be easy. I don't think Forest are gonna. It never is, right? It's football. But what I think this season is going to be interesting a lot of people have already predicted Ipswich, Southampton, Leicester to go down. I'd put Leicester in my bottom three. I think we're going to do some predictions properly in the next few days. I would put Leicester in my bottom three, but that's probably more the points deduction than the football. I still think Cooper's going to do quite a good job there, given time. I don't think Ipswich are going to struggle. I genuinely think that Ipswich could stay up out of the three that have come up. So, because they maybe have that surprise factor, the same with Forest, the same with, cast your mind back to like when Sheffield United came up that first time and stunned everyone, Leeds under Bielsa that first season. So often newly promoted teams can shock people. I think they could be one of those. So it is difficult. 12th's maybe me being...
I think I've just shot down your 12th and you're sitting
You have,
there.
haven't you? You really have. You've just broken down, yeah. I feel like one of those politicians now interviewed on the telly, David, and I feel like you've just completely ripped me apart.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having an opinion and then being presented new data and then changing your opinion. That's completely
I'm sticking with 12. I'm sticking with 12, mate. You're not letting me change.
Well, I'd actually say we need to be more wary of Southampton because they're a wily club that have been in and out of the Premier League ongoing. Like when you think Premier League teams, I don't think of Ipswich, but I do think of Southampton. And so they're a team that is used to being in the Premier League. So they might be more used to, and they've been in the Premier League more recently. But it's going to be tough for those three, certainly for Leicester.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
We'd all take 15th right now, though, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, of course we would. We absolutely would. Just keep building on the last few seasons in the Premier League. And if you think I'm being optimistic, this is maybe where I get it from, David. My dad has put a £10 bet on Forest winning the league.
Well, what was it? Leicester were what, 5,000 to 1?
Yeah, I think Forest was something like 1,000 to 1. I think that's what he said they were. So there you go. Yeah.
For Forest to win the league, Tywell and Chris Wood would have to both score 20 goals each and have no injuries. Ryan Yates would need to suddenly discover some creative attacking flair. And I'm trying to think what else would need to happen. I'm not sure. One question for you. Is there a spot for Joe Worrell in your 25-man squad, Max? I think he might sneak in.
Yeah, I do, because if Forest, especially now Niakate went, I think if Forest got thin on the ground all of a sudden, I think Joe Worrell can do a job still. Might not be the prettiest, might not be the best, but I think Joe Worrell could. I mean, I actually think any championship club looking at I could imagine Joe Worrell maybe going to somebody like a Sunderland in the championship that are pushing towards the playoffs. He'd be a very solid, look at somebody like Steve Cook at QPR. And he captained QPR for the opening weekend, and he's done a great job. So I think that's more likely. But Forest should probably keep him. He's another option if something goes drastically wrong. So there we go. Would you keep Joe Worrell as well?
Based on, I think we're going to be playing three at the back more regularly. I think we need a bit more depth in that position than we might consider, and for a player who could come in and do a job for us 1 match out of 10. He's as good an option as we're likely to get. I think his treatment that he's gotten has not been ideal. I'd love for Joe Worrell's Forest story not to be over, if I'm candid. I think it'd be like, how good would it be, even if he came in for a cameo in a Liverpool match where he came on and we were able to hold on to a 1-0 win, or he just, it'd just be terrific just to see him. And it's also just even sad to see the social media shorts, and you see them, he's in it, and then they don't show him as much. It just is a bit of a bummer. So, I'd love to see him. And then, and I was going to ask you this trivia question at the top of the show, Max. Who is Forest's all-time Premier League top goal scorer?
Oh, I saw this on a graphic the other day. No, that was it could have been. I think most appearances with Steve Chettle.
Most appearances is Steve Chettle. I think it's.
I got that one. I don't know. Give me an A, B, and a C.
I'll say Brian Roy, Stan Collymore, and Stuart Pearce.
Surely it was Collymore.
It's Brian Roy.
Oh, really?
Stuart Pearce has got 18 goals. Stuart Pearce has actually got quite a lot. Yeah, it's 24. It's 24 with Brian Roy. I think I've just frozen. Is that me that's just frozen? Here I am. I'm back. Oh, I think you've lost me. I'm here, Max. I'm not trying to. Yeah.
Maybe there we are. We're back.
Are we back? Was that me or was that you?
Well, no, I think it could have been a bit of both. It could have been a break. Do you know what? I reckon it was the powers that be that didn't like us talking about who Forest's top goal scorer was.
Oh, I tell you what would have been good is if you'd have gone frozen just as I'd asked the question to give anyone watching the chance to come back and look. So, yes, Brian Roy, Forest legend, out there on the left would make my Nottingham Forest all-time top Premier League squad. I've been pressuring Max to let me do an all-time Nottingham Forest Premier League 11. Obviously, if we did an all-time top Nottingham Forest squad, then it would be just the European Cup winners and Stuart Pearce and maybe Roy Keane. But no, an all-time Nottingham Forest 11. So if you want to do me a favour, get your comments into the comment section. I'm not sure even Max is going to see this bit. And you can help me convince my dear friend Max that he should let us do a Nottingham Forest all-time 11. Other than that, just super pumped for the start of the Premier League season. I just would remind all of our Forest friends and anyone who gets to the match that you guys have a great responsibility to support the team. And so just getting the text through from Max. I've gone, internet has fully gone. Keep talking if you can. There it is, the text message from Max. Yes, I will certainly keep talking. But yes, to everyone that attends the games, you've got such a responsibility just in terms of being there and lifting the team. And it's going to be such a brilliant moment for us as we go out against Bournemouth. And I think, we should be thinking, can we get 7 of the first 9 points that are available? Chock-a-Block's come through with a comment here. He says Crossley, Charles, Pearce, Walker, Murillo, Keane, Dominguez, Wone, Stone, Collymore and Roy.
There we go. Technology, David. I had no idea what happened there. The Wi-Fi just completely crashed.
Well, we've gone into a segment. I finally, with me just running the podcast, I just started the segment on Forest.
Got your dream finally.
I got my dream. Invite you back. All-time top Forest Premier League 11, and Chock-a-Block has come through with a comment.
I'll put it up.
You can put it up. He's gone with Crossley, Gary Charles, Stuart Pearce, Walker, and Murillo. Geez, it's such a difficult choice with the centre backs there. But Walker was only really that one season that we got relegated. In fact, I think he might have even been gone by then. Actually, I think he was actually not even with Forest in the first Premier League season. So Wone was good.
Save this, David. You've got to save it for the standalone episode. It's coming soon, I promise you.
It's coming. Oh, so good. Well, that's technology for you. Max, who knows what I might have said whilst you were away.
Honestly, I've got no idea. I've literally just come back. I'm honestly off to go and get some new Wi-Fi after this. Talk about my Wi-Fi going down. You're all the way in Australia and my Wi-Fi in cloudy Manchester just goes down. There you go. Technology. What a nightmare. Hopefully
that's not a sign of Nottingham Forest doing so well at the 88th minute when things and then it's just like everything just goes to the SH1T and everything just falls apart. But it's always fun chatting Forest with you, Maxie.
It is. Thank you, David. After taking over with technical difficulties, we will sort that out for this week. We've got a busy week. I'm interviewing Robbie Earnshaw about Forest on Thursday, right? So let's hope the Wi-Fi doesn't go down. So I'm looking forward to bringing you all that. And we've got lots of other stuff. We've got a season preview, and then we'll have some guys from some Bournemouth YouTube channels come on Friday to give us their intake really into the pre-season and how they're feeling ahead of it all. But from a technical fault-driven show, me and David are off. Thanks for all your questions. Do give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us across Apple and Spotify podcasts. I am off to get some new Wi-Fi. Bye-bye.